What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So a lot of people, of course, are very excited hearing about next generation for Microsoft and Sony. Well, Microsoft especially recently talking a lot about this, but Sony, some have wondered how far they might push the PlayStation 6. Well, if that's what you're thinking, it could be coming a bit sooner than you're expecting, along with, though, the handheld, which we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about Crimson Desert as we're getting more and more information around this game that seems almost unbelievable for people as we head into next week with its release, as we're starting to see actual footage for a console version with this game. And we did get those numbers for Pokemon Pokopia coming out of Japan, even giving us an idea for this massive launch there, what the physical digital ratio was. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over the world of gaming news, try to keep you up to date. So even if there isn't a video that you get notified of, just know there most likely is a video here for you in the morning to check out. And we're gonna start today with Marvel Maximum Collection. And it's a collection that popped up almost randomly that I thought looked awesome because, of course, they had Maximum Carnage, and that's a game that I have a lot of nostalgia for back on the Super Nintendo with the red cartridge. Now, though, we have a release date for it, and it was shown here in this trailer, and it is coming out March 27th. Now, that will be out for the Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and releasing on PC through Steam. And just a quick reminder for the games in this collection, the X-Men arcade game that will have full online multiplayer support for up to 6 players. That uses rollback netcode, so good news there. Captain America and the Avengers, Spider-Man, Venom Maximum Carnage, the Venom Spider-Man Separation Anxiety, Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge, Silver Surfer, which is an interesting inclusion, as well as a bunch of other stuff, a music player, integrated cheats menu, archives, rewind and save states, and others with display options. So, I mean, awesome stuff here. I'll be picking this up immediately when it goes on sale March 27th. It's limited run, so the physical copies are just, it's kind of like who knows when you're going to get them. At least for now, I'll probably pick it up digitally and check it out with Maximum Carnage. And yeah, sure, some of the X-Men arcade stuff, just to see how it performs online. Also, we got a surprise release. We had an announcement for a game that's going to Xbox and PC, and then it just dropped into stores, and you can see this trailer. It's Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. This is the game that launched alongside of the Switch 2 last year. Now it looks like it's breaking away from the Switch 2 exclusivity and releasing on Steam and Xbox. Not on PlayStation 5 though, which is interesting. But if you think back to something like Octopath Traveler, that also ended up going to Xbox and PC first and not to PlayStation, on release when that ended up breaking away from Switch exclusivity. So interesting stuff for this one to just kind of randomly appear and then drop into those stores. And it even dropped into those stores with a discount, I believe, right now on Xbox and on Steam. I think it's at $32, not even the full $40. I mean, it's cool. If you didn't play Bravely Default back in the day or anything, this is just, again, an HD remaster of it, and I think worth checking out. So let me know if this is something you plan on picking up either today or sometime in the future, or are you holding out for a PlayStation 5 version at some point in the future? Oh, and unsurprisingly, it does appear that Microsoft is trying to bury the This is an Xbox ad campaign that confused people made fun of, and it turns out even internally, they weren't exactly high on the idea of everything, I guess, being an Xbox with that ad campaign. So much so, you can see, now this is over on Game Developer who first noticed this. It looks like on the website, when you go to the original announcements for this, it's just kind of like 404 error, and it's difficult to find unless you use like the Wayback Machine or something, or on archives to where you can see it. But for the most part, yeah, they're kind of burying that era heading into this new generation with Project Helix. We heard all the stuff about this as an Xbox not exactly doing well internally at Microsoft, and from there, it hasn't exactly helped to drive demand for whatever Xbox is right now, and that's still the question. Like, even Project Helix, is it a PC? Is it an Xbox? Is it a console? People aren't really 100% sure. There's a lot of arguing going on, and look, this is an Xbox thing where they're playing Xbox games on everything other than just the Xbox Series X and S. Wasn't really helping matters. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft and Sony heading into next generation. And this is coming out more and more, especially now with Microsoft breaking the seal of secrecy on Project Helix, especially after their GDC presentation where they discussed quite a bit about the idea of bringing together their Windows and Xbox console environments, and then also backwards compatibility, even extending to current PCs. I mean, we'll find out even next month where they're going to release an Xbox mode for current gaming PCs that people are running right now with Windows. But still, the question remains, are these platforms that are going to launch, say, in holiday 2027, are we actually looking at a 2028 or 2029 launch, as some have kind of speculated on when it comes to the current DRAM supply crunch? Well, with Microsoft saying that they're sending out these alpha development kits starting in 2027, they're mentioning like early 2027, that does kind of line up with how we would expect things to go if they were going to follow the same path as the Xbox Series. Those dev kits went out earlier in 2020, and then the console did indeed launch that holiday. Sony's a little interesting because they tend to send out development kits earlier than that, so I guess keep an eye out to see if maybe PlayStation 6 dev kits start to have images leak out online. Maybe one will be a pizza warmer that popped up on eBay, and that was a whole thing. But take a look at this. This is posted by Kepler over on NeoGAF, and this account tends to follow along with a lot of chip fabrication and manufacturing, so they are certainly plugged in, and it's not even just with gaming, it's with all kinds of electronics and other aspects. But they say both Xbox and PlayStation 6 are still in track or on track for holiday 2027. By the way, this makes me immediately think about how AMD will just at times openly talk about Xbox or Steam Machine and like, oh, Xbox, yeah, we're working with them on the next AMD chipset that's going to go into their new system, and it's on track for 2027, and Microsoft's like, hold on a minute, let's not get too crazy here, we still have to actually introduce this thing. So I kind of do think Microsoft in particular is going to go holiday 2027 with Project Helix, especially with how we're seeing them talk about it a lot. Think about right now, in the first half of 2026, we're a year and a half away even from that. So we still have some time for them to talk about it more, show it off, and in some cases, put it out there with this Xbox mode and backwards compatibility for the 25th anniversary of Xbox later on this year. PlayStation's a bit different. All right, this is an interesting one with the PS6 because not only is Kepler mentioning the PlayStation 6 console, remember, there's a handheld reportedly out there, and it appears Kepler is saying that the PlayStation handheld is on track for 2027. Okay, this kind of feels like a bit of overload, I will admit, because I'm looking now at the lineup, Microsoft with Project Helix, that we believe, I'm gonna say believe right now, is one SKU, but you never know. There could be a bit of a surprise, an Xbox Series S curveball, if you will, because all things right now point to this new Xbox being very, very expensive. I mean, Moore's Law is Dead has done some breakdowns on the chips, PlayStation 6 versus the next Xbox, Magnus, and it's quite substantial in terms of the difference in die size and capabilities of what's going into these things, even the amount of RAM. It's almost overwhelming if you're trying to fit this into a $600, $700 box, and that, of course, a sticking point with the pricing. But with a handheld also out there that we see what PC handhelds cost, you got that and a PlayStation 6. Are those your two SKUs for Sony? As opposed to, oh, there's a digital PS5 and a disc-based PS5. Still the same hardware, but one has a disc drive and one doesn't. They were able to work around that eventually where you just buy a disc drive separately. But that, I'm picturing in my mind, best case scenario, I'll say best case, for the PlayStation 6 is $700. As best case for the handheld, like $650, $700, maybe? So if you're trying to get, like, look, I will say the handheld for me right now is the most interesting part because it's mentioned that it can also dock. But let's say you want both, you're not gonna be that far off of what Microsoft might show up with, that being a $1,200, $1,400 system. And yeah, that comes down to next generation. I think it's gonna be quite expensive. Just outright. And I don't think anyone's going to dispute that necessarily. It will just be getting more expensive from here, unless you want to go cloud-based. But the question, of course, comes up, do we need next generation? I don't believe we need it, but I do believe behind the scenes, Sony needs to move forward with it because they're collaborating with AMD. AMD and Sony have contracts in place, and the DRAM crunch isn't going to be enough for Sony to stop or delay a generation they think will go another 7 years, all right, compared to like what we have right now with the PS5. So I do think they will push forward, and let's face it, there's going to be a lengthy cross-gen period anyway. So if you're content with the PS5 and maybe a PS6 exclusive or two at launch don't really catch your eye, you can just kind of hang out with the PS5 for a bit and see how the generation gets started after the first 2 years even. So I don't think there's gonna be a lot of pressure to push people to PlayStation 6, and you'll have plenty of games still on your PS5. But when it comes to hardware, planning for what ends up being 4 years minimum for a new platform, I think it's kind of hard for them to pull the ripcord at the last second and go, hold on, we're gonna wait a bit here. I think they're gonna move as planned, and yeah, it seems like right now it's all lining up for a pretty big holiday 2027 when it comes to new hardware. Next up, let's talk about Crimson Desert. This game is out next week. It's coming to us from Pearl Abyss. It's using their own proprietary engine, and it's been scrutinized quite a bit because it looks almost too good to be true, especially with some of the clips they've shown off in these developer diaries, explaining the world and how it just seems to get bigger and bigger every time they show it. And even the visuals doesn't necessarily line up with an open world that's that sprawling, we'll say, along with all the mechanics and everything else. Well, now, Digital Foundry has had a chance to go hands-on with the game, do some of their typical analysis, and they released a video on it yesterday with John Linneman talking about it for quite some time. And it sounded like he was like blown away by this game. I will say, while they're running it on console, it is on the PlayStation 5 Pro. And I understand there are many enthusiasts out there, we'll say, with a PS5 Pro who would be interested in the analysis for this game, at least to this degree, to watch the frame rate charts and stuff move around. But I do think there are a lot of questions that the vast majority of people who have PlayStation 5 have, which is how does it run on a base PlayStation 5 system? Anyway, with the PS5 Pro, it seems like they're, at this time, pulling it off pretty well. All right, I say it this time because the game reportedly is, I mean, just incredibly long. Like, we're talking 60, 70, 80 hours for a game like this with hundreds of quest lines, 70-something bosses. It just sounds like there's a lot here, so it's hard to get a grasp for how this game performs across the board in, I think they said they had about 4 hours of play with this game. And that's also running into a lot of the previews that are happening right now. So at least Digital Foundry had time on their own to be able to check this stuff out. And from what I could see, the frame rate is pretty good. There's like a quality mode, there's like a performance mode. They've mentioned that in a chart that they released. But it seemed like, for the most part, the only time where they were really having a hard time with the performance and VRR support was in highly populated and dense areas, whether it was so many enemies, like they showed bugs, or just NPCs swarming around you in different scenarios. That's where the CPU limitations kind of kick in, and where I think the PS5, even the PS5 Pro, will have some issues because we're dealing with like a Zen 2 CPU, which, as we just talked about, the PlayStation 6 being Zen 6, yeah, it's a bit older now, and these are the kind of games that we expect to really test the current generation. At least here it seems to be. But, you know, I'm still, I don't want to say skeptical about this game. I gotta see it for myself. So let me know down in the comments. While we have now seen at least footage from Digital Foundry at the PS5 Pro, I'm thinking about just grabbing this game when it goes live, playing an hour of the game and just posting it as I'm like going through it with commentary and stuff. And let me know if you'd rather see it on the PS5 Pro or the base PS5, because I have access to either one, and that's kind of what I was leaning towards to pick it up for right now. But I feel like the base PS5 is still a pretty big question mark, and maybe that's where I'll check it out. We'll see. Oh, and then also on the side of PC, it does appear that Pearl Abyss has updated their Steam page to now include de novo support. So kind of a shame that this happened a week before release, because I'm sure there are people out there who have already preloaded on Steam and they're ready to go because of how the game has looked and all these previews and build up that they've done on their channel and other social media aspects. So, yeah, not great. I mean, look, here's with Steam, they do let you refund the game if you haven't played it more than 2 hours, and no one's played most people haven't played Crimson Desert, we'll say, on Steam. In that instance, I would kind of hang out and wait to see if we have that unfortunate stuttering issue that can pop up with the Nova support, or just really poor performance. So I'm sure plenty of people will be picking it up on Steam and at least giving you an idea as to how performance is, even with this form of DRM enabled. Next up, let's talk about those Famitsu sales charts. This does give us an indication as to how Pokopia did at retail physically versus the number that Nintendo shared, and we can kind of see the difference digitally. So let's take a look. This is posted up over on Stallbase forums, and we can see at the top here, Pokemon Pokopia, 541,371 copies. So this was almost 50% digital and physical. If we look at it here, just going off of the 1 million that was shared by Nintendo in that press release, 54% physical then, 46% digital. And I mean, look, we also heard that there were shortages, sellouts for this game. So I'm sure there are people out there who were trying to get it physically, couldn't, and just said, you know what, I'll buy it digitally, whatever, at least I have the game. So that's, I mean, unfortunate if you're someone who just wanted it physically for, we'll say, resale value or the ability to trade it in later. Again, I know it's a game key card, so that's a whole thing, but still, you can trade them in. Anyway, then we have Resident Evil Requiem right below that, 23,459 copies on the PlayStation 5. Then Mario Kart World, Mario Tennis Fever, that's down to 9,626 copies. Then Resident Evil Requiem on the Switch 2, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, Animal Crossing New Horizons again, that one's on the Switch 2, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, and then Minecraft on the Switch, rounding out the top 10. Moving over to hardware sales, the Switch 2 is at the top, 127,508 systems. I mean, the Switch 2 is running headfirst at 5 million systems very, very quickly here in Japan alone. And then that does bring up the question, will it run down the PlayStation 5 before the end of this year? It kind of looks like it will be doing that, as the PS5's right at 7.4 million versus the 4.7 million for the Switch 2. But a bump as you'd expect for Pokopia. Then we have the Switch one right below that, 23,770. PlayStation 5, 16,819. The Xbox Series, 486. And somehow they found 29 PlayStation 4s in the back to sell this past week. So there we have it. Pokopia is indeed a system seller. We can just see it from the bump of, like 50% for consoles. And that's maybe even playing off the idea that people were buying a Switch 2 the week before in anticipation of Pokopia, and now it comes down to Nintendo and the Pokemon Company being able to get more stock out there to stores with sellouts all over the place. I mean, I was at Walmart, checked it out, nothing there. Best Buy, nothing, and they didn't even have Switch 2 systems. So I don't know if Pokopia managed to sell out Switch 2s even in my area at some of these places. It's anecdotal, but let me know down in the comments if you're also still seeing sellouts at some of your local retailers for Pokopia, but also the Switch 2. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. This is a game on the Switch 2 that was supposed to come out last year, got delayed though now into 2026, and we're still waiting to hear exactly when it's coming out, because not only do we have Elden Ring from FromSoft, we're also really looking towards the Duskbloods. I've already played plenty of Elden Ring on the PlayStation 5 years ago now, so in my mind, it's like all about the Duskbloods. But I'm a little curious to see if maybe they were able to fix up, we'll say, the Switch 2 version, because it was struggling in some of its previous outings at different conventions. Well, it made an appearance at GDC, and check this out. So GameSpot had almost 10 minutes of off-screen gameplay. That's how they had it set up, is just in handheld mode, and so it's kind of over the shoulder. We can't, unfortunately, that means we can't really get a great look, we'll say, at, say, frame rates or anything, but it looks a lot smoother versus what we saw last year when it led to the decision to delay the game. This is great news because, I mean, the fact they're showing it off at GDC, which is a developers conference, is good, because these are people who probably would notice issues with frame rate or other things, and of course, working with the Switch 2 in development, but it also makes me think we're getting closer to when they can announce a release date and get this thing out there, because I feel like this game has to get out first before we move on and start really talking about and ramping up marketing for the Duskbloods, which at this point in time, I can only assume is coming out this holiday season. And that alone probably would be a Switch 2 seller, like for the system. I mean, just a new game from FromSoft that was mistaken as Bloodborne there for a bit. Got the news recently for Bloodborne not being a thing and Bluepoint unfortunately being shuttered. Oh, here comes the Duskbloods. Maybe I'll check that out. So that's it's an audience that'd be kind of interesting to tap for the Switch 2. Not necessarily one that Nintendo would be able to tap into typically here, but this time with FromSoft and the Duskbloods. But first, Elden Ring. Gotta get that out there. Here's hoping after a showing like this, it's just about ready for that release date so we can kind of move on to the next one. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which are you more interested in hearing about in 2027 from Sony? 76% say that new PlayStation handheld, 24% say the PlayStation 6. I kind of think the reason I mean, honestly, the reason for these results is that the PlayStation 6 or the PlayStation handheld, which, yeah, might be a PlayStation 6 handheld, is going to be new and different. I mean, not necessarily brand new from Sony because they have dabbled in the handheld space, and the Vita, unfortunately, didn't work out for them. But now they'd be returning to the handheld space, and they'd eliminate, I think, the biggest issue with the Vita and what really hurt it, outside of the memory cards, I know, and AT&T doing the service, was the idea of having to split up their developers. Like, you have to work on the Vita or you have to work on the PlayStation 4. And we saw what happened. They all went to the PS4 because it was successful. It was moving units. But now you don't have to do that. It seems like the same games work on the handheld versus the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 6. The PlayStation 6, though, Sony still has a lot to prove as like, why should you upgrade to this? What is it we're doing here that's like, wow, I gotta have it? Because I think there are gonna be many people who are content with their PS5, like there are people right now who are content with their PS4. And it's only gonna get more difficult to be able to sell the PS6 if it shows up and it really is $700 or more. So I gotta see the strategy from Sony, because at least the handheld, it's eye-catching, it's new. It's like, whoa, okay, cool, this is a portable system from Sony that's not streamed. It's all native. Because I'll admit, that's I'm more interested in that right now than the PlayStation 6, especially if you can dock the handheld. That could be kind of cool. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Brad, who says, that's well and good about Helix having backwards compatibility, but not for physical discs, as I am assuming it will not have a disk drive attached to it. So that's an interesting thing, a point that people are bringing up, the idea of a disk drive. Would we have access to one? Because I mean, technically it's running Windows, and Windows obviously has support for not only external drives, internal drives, and I do wonder if there's an idea within Microsoft of, hey, you know what? The system won't have a disk drive out of the box, but these brands work with it. You could plug it in, it needs to be a Blu-ray drive, this brand or whatever, maybe they sell one, and then you will have access to your disc-based games because they all install anyway. I mean, with the Xbox, remember the Xbox One, Xbox Series Smart Delivery? All it would do is when you had the game in there, for the most part, download large portions or the entirety of the game from their servers. Even though you have the disc, it's like, okay, we're gonna check in, yep, you're good. Now let's go ahead and grab the correct version for this system. So they kind of already have the building blocks in place. Even when it came to backwards compatibility of, say, an Xbox 360 game, if you pop the disc in, all it does is check and then download the game. So I feel like it's there. It just comes down to, does Microsoft want to incorporate that? That's the real question. But it would be really cool if they do this Xbox mode, and then later on in the year, they do the backwards compatibility update, and they let you pop a disc in, and then all these PC gamers go, oh wait, I don't have a disc drive on my PC anyway. And then Amazon sales charts, just the basic LG DVD Blu-ray drive jumps to #1. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about the Steam Machine and how it feels like Valve is really unsure as to when this thing is gonna come out, even though 2026 feels likely. Some of their wording is a bit concerning. I did a video looking at that, and I'll leave right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.